Rabbit asks, "What do you mean, dumped some girl?" "They found her in his car, upside down in the water beside some bridge. I forget the name. One of those islands they have up there. It happened last night, and he didn't go to the police until they were about to nab him. And they call this a democracy, Harry, is the irony of it. What would you call it?" "I'd call it a police state run by the Kennedys is what I would call it. That family has been out to buy the country since those Brahmins up in Boston snubbed old Joe. And then he put himself in league with Hitler when he was FDR's man in London. Now they've got the young widow to marry a rich Greek in case they run out of American money. Not that she's the goody gumdrop the papers say. Those two were a match. What's your opinion, Harry? Am I talking out of line? I'm such a back number now I don't trust to hear myself talk." Aha. "I'd say," Harry says, "you're right with it. You should join the kids and buy yourself a bomb to throw." Springer looks over from driving. The yellow parabolas of a McDonald's flash by. The tinsel spinners of a mobile station break the noon sun into trinkets to see if he has oversold. How timid, really, people who live by people must be. Earl Angstrom was right about that, at least. Better make your deals with things. Springer says, hedgily smiling, showing porcelain teeth beneath the gray blur, "I'll say this for the Kennedys, however. They don't get my dander up like FDR. There was a man, Harry, so mad he died of maggots in the brain. One thing to be said for the Kennedys. They didn't try to turn the economy upside down for the benefit of the poor. They were willing to ride along with the system as it's been handed down." Nelson says, "Billy Fosnacht says when we grow up we're going to overthrow the system." Springer can't hear, lost in his vision of executive madness and corruption. "He tried to turn it upside down for the benefit of the black and white trash. And when that didn't work for 8 years, he finagled the little Japanese into attacking Pearl Harbor, so he had a war to bail him out of the Depression. That's why you have these wars, believe it or not, to bail the Democrats out of their crazy economics. LBJ now, as soon as he got his 4-year guarantee, went into Vietnam, where nobody wanted us, just to get the coloreds up into the economy. LBJ, he was an FDR man. Truman, the same thing in Korea. History bears me out. Every time. Call me an old fogey if you want to." "What's your angle on it, Nelson?" "Last night on television," the boy says, "we watched an old movie about fighting the Japs in the Pacific. This little boat sank, and the captain, or whatever he was, swam miles with a broken back, dragging this other guy." "That was Kennedy," Springer says. "Pure propaganda. They made that movie because old Joe owned a lot of those studios. He sank his money into the movies when all the honest businessmen who'd put this country on the map were losing their shirts. He was in close league, the story I heard, with those Jewish communists out there." Rabbit tells Nelson, "That's where your Aunt Mim is now, out there with those communists." "She's beautiful," Nelson tells his grandfather. "Have you ever seen my Aunt Mim?" "Not as much as I'd have liked to, Nellie. She is a striking figure, however. I know you're right there. You're right to be proud of her." "Harry, your silence disturbs me. Your silence disturbs me. Maybe I'm way off base, way off. Tell me what you think of the state of the nation. With these riots everywhere and this poor Polish girl, she comes from up near Williamsport, abused and drowned when the future president takes his pleasure. Pregnant wouldn't surprise me. Nellie, you shouldn't be hearing any of this." Harry stretches, cramped in the car, short of sleep. They are near the stadium, and a little colored boy is waving them into a lot. "I think," he says about America, "it's still the only place." But something has gone wrong. The ball game is boring. The spaced dance of the men in white fails to enchant. The code beneath the staccato spurts of distant motion refuses to yield its meaning. Though basketball was his sport, Rabbit remembers the grandeur of all that grass. The excited, perilous feeling when a high fly was hoisted your way, the homing in on the expanding dot, the leathery smack of the catch, the formalized nonchalance of the heads-down trot in toward the bench, the ritual flips and shrugs and the nervous courtesies of the batter's box. There was a beauty here bigger than the hurtling beauty of basketball, a beauty refined from country pastures, a game of solitariness, of waiting, waiting for the pitcher to complete his gaze toward first base and throw his lightning, a game whose very taste of spit and dust and grass and sweat and leather and sun was America. Sitting behind first base between his son and his father-in-law, the son resting on his thighs like a board, the rolled-up program like a baton in his hand, Rabbit waits for this beauty to rise to him, through the cheers and the rhythm of innings, the traditional national magic, tasting of his youth. But something is wrong. The crowd is sparse, thinning out from a cluster behind the infield to fistfuls of boys sprawling on the green seats sloped up from the outfield. Sparse, loud, hard. Only the drunks, the bookies, the cripples, the senile, and the delinquents come out to the ballpark on a Saturday afternoon. Their catcalls are coarse and unkind. "Ram it down his throat, Speedy! Kill that black bastard!" Rabbit yearns to protect the game from the crowd. The poetry of space and inaction is too fine, too slowly spun for them. And for the players themselves, they seem expert listlessly, each intent on a private dream of making it into the big leagues and the big money, the own-your-own bowling alley money. They seem specialists like any other, not men playing a game because all men are boys, time is trying to outsmart. A gallant pretense has been abandoned. A delicate balance is being crushed. Only the explosions of orange felt on their uniforms under the script blasts evoke the old world of heraldic local loyalties. Brewer versus Hazelton, and who cares? Not Springer. As he watches, his lips absent-mindedly move as if sorting out old accounts. Not Nelson. The screen of reality is too big for the child. He misses television's running commentary, the audacious commercials. His politely unspoken disappointment nags at Rabbit, prevents the game from rising and filling the scared hollow Janice's confession has left in him. The 8-team leagues of his boyhood have vanished with the 48-star flag. The shortstops never chew tobacco anymore. The game drags on with a tedious flurry of strategy, of pinch hitters and intentional walks, prolonging the end. Hazelton wins, 7-3. Old man Springer sighs, gets up as if from a nap in an unnatural position. He wipes a fleck of beer from his mustache. "Afraid our boys didn't come through for you, Nellie," he says. "That's okay, Grandpa, it was neat." To Harry, he says, needing to find something to sell, "That young Trexler is a comer, though." Rabbit is cross and groggy from 2 beers in the sun. He doesn't invite Springer into his house, just thanks him a lot for everything. The house is silent, like outer space. On the kitchen table is a sealed envelope addressed Harry. The letter inside, in Janice's half-formed hand, with its unsteady slant and miserly cramping, says, "Harry, dear, I must go off a few days to think. Please don't try to find or follow me, please. It is very important that we all respect each other as people and trust each other now. I was shocked by your idea that I keep a lover, since I don't think this would be honest, and it made me wonder if I mean anything to you at all. Tell Nelson I've gone to the Poconos with Grandmom. Don't forget to give him lunch money for the playground. Love, Jan." Jan. Her name from the years she used to work at Kroll's, selling salted nuts in the smock with Jan stitched above the pocket in script. This book is continued on cassette number 3, side 1. Jan. Her name from the years she used to work at Kroll's, selling salted nuts in the smock with Jan stitched above the pocket in script. In those days, some afternoons, they would go to her friend's apartment up on 8th Street, the horizontal rose rays as the sun set behind the great gray gas holder. The wonder of it as she let him slip off all her clothes, underwear more substantial then, stocking snaps to undo, the marks of elastic printed on her skin. Jan, that name suspended in her these 15 years. The notes she left for him around the house were simply signed J. "Where's Mom?" Nelson asks. "She's gone to the Poconos," Rabbit says, pulling the note back toward his chest in case the boy tries to read it. She's gone with Mom. Her legs were getting worse in this heat. I know it seems crazy, but that's how things are sometimes. You and I can eat over at Burger Bliss tonight." The boy's face, freckled, framed by hair that covers his ears, his plump lips buttoned shut, and his eyes sunk in fear of making a mistake, goes rapt, seems to listen, as when he was 3 and flight and death were rustling above him. Perhaps his experience then shapes what he says now. Firmly, he tells his father, "She'll be back." Sunday dawns muggy. The 7 o'clock news says there was scattered shooting again last night in York and the western part of the state. Edgartown Police Chief Dominic J. Arena is expected today formally to charge Senator Kennedy with leaving the scene of an accident. Apollo 11 is in lunar orbit, and the Eagle is being readied for its historic descent. Rabbit slept badly and turns the box off and walks around the lawn barefoot to shock the headache out of his skull. The houses of Penn Villas are still, with the odd Catholic car roaring off to Mass. Nelson comes down around 9, and after making him breakfast, Harry goes back to bed with a cup of coffee and the Sunday Brewer Triumph. Snoopy, on the front page of the funny papers, is lying dreaming on his doghouse, and soon Rabbit falls asleep. The kid looks scared. The boy's face shouts, and a soundless balloon comes out. When he awakes, the electric clock says 5 of 11. The second hand sweeps around and around. A wonder the gears don't wear themselves to dust. Rabbit dresses, fresh white shirt out of respect for Sunday, and goes downstairs the second time, his feet still bare, the carpeting fuzzy to his soles, a bachelor feeling. The house feels enormous, all his. He picks up the phone book and searches out Stavros, Chaz, 1204 Eisenhower Avenue. He doesn't dial, merely gazes at the name and the number, as if to see his wife, smaller than a pencil dot, crawling between the letters. He dials a number he knows by heart. His father answers. "Yes?" A wary voice, ready to hang up on a madman or a salesman. "Pop, hi. Hey, I hope you didn't wait up or anything the other night. We weren't able to make it, and I couldn't even get to a phone." A little pause, not much, just enough to let him know they were indeed disappointed. "No, we figured something came up and went to bed about the usual time. Your mother isn't one to waste herself complaining, as you know." "Right. Well, look, about today." His voice goes hoarse to whisper, "Harry, you must come over today. You'll break her heart if you don't." I will, but—" The old man has cupped his mouth against the receiver, urging hoarsely, "This may be her last, you know, birthday." "We're coming, Pop. I mean, some of us are. Janice has had to go off." "Go off how?" "It's kind of complicated, something about her mother's legs in the Poconos. She decided last night she had to, I don't know. It's nothing to worry about. Everybody's all right, she's just not here. The kid's here, though." To illustrate, he calls, "Nelson?" There is no answer. "He must be out on his bike, Pop. He's been right around all morning. When would you like us?" "Whenever it suits you, Harry. Late afternoon or so. Come as early as you can. We're having roast beef. Your mother wanted to bake a cake, but the doctor thought it might be too much for her. I bought a nice one over at the Half-a-Loaf. Butterscotch icing. Didn't that used to be your favorite?" "It's her birthday, not mine. What should I get her for a present?" "Just your simple presents, Harry, is all the presents she desires." "Yeah, okay. I'll think of something. Explain to her Janice won't be coming. As my father, God rest, used to say, it is to be regretted, but it can't be helped." Once Pop finds that ceremonious vein, he tends to ride it. Rabbit hangs up. The kid's bike, a rusty Schwinn, been meaning to get him a new one, both fenders rub, is not in the garage, nor is the Falcon. Only the oil cans, the gas can, the lawn mower, the jumbled garden hose. Janice must have used it last. A lawn rake with missing teeth, and the Falcon's snow tires are there. For an hour or so, Rabbit swims around the house in a daze, not knowing who to call, not having a car, not wanting to go inside with the television set. He pulls weeds in the border beds where that first excited summer of their own house Janice planted bulbs and set in plants and shrubs. Since then, they have done nothing, just watched the azaleas die and accepted the daffodils and iris as they came in, and let the phlox and weeds fight as these subsequent summers wore on, nature lost in nature. He weeds until he begins to see himself as a weed, and his hand with its ugly big moons on the fingernails as God's hand, choosing and killing. Then he goes inside the house and looks into the refrigerator and eats a carrot raw. He looks into the phone directory and looks up Fasnacht. There are a lot of them, and it takes him a while to figure out M is the one. M for Margaret, and just the initial to put off obscene calls, though if he were on that kick, he'd soon figure out that initials were unattached women. Peggy, hi. This is Harry Angstrom. He says his name with faint, proud emphasis. They were in school together, and she remembers him when he was somebody. I was just wondering, is Nelson over there playing with Billy? He went off on his bike a while ago, and I'm wondering where to. Peggy says, He's not here, Harry. Sorry. Her voice is frosted with all she knows, Janice burbling into her ear yesterday. Then more warmly she asks, How's everything going? He reads the equation. Ollie left me, Janice left you. Hello. He says hastily, Great. Hey, if Nelson comes by, tell him I want him. We got to go to his grandmother's. Her voice cools in saying goodbye, joins the vast, glaring ice face of all those who know. Nelson seems the one person left in the county who doesn't know. This makes him even more precious. Yet when the boy returns, red-faced and damp-haired from hard pedaling, he tells his father, I was at the Fasnachts. Rabbit blinks and says, Okay. After this, let's keep in better touch. I'm your mother and father for the time being. They eat lunch. Lebanon bologna on stale rye. They walk up Emberley to Weiser and catch a 12 bus east into Brewer. It being Sunday, they have to wait 20 minutes under the cloudless, colorless sky. At the hospital stop, a crowd of visitors gets on, having done their duty, dazed, carrying away dead flowers and red books. Boats, white arrowheads tipping wrinkled wakes, are buzzing in the black river below the bridge. A colored kid leaves his foot in the aisle. When Rabbit tries to get off, he steps over it. Big feet, the boy remarks to his companion. Fat lips, Nelson following, says to the colored boy. Then they try to find a store open. His mother was always difficult to buy presents for. Other children had given their mothers cheerful junk, dime store jewelry, bottles of toilet water, boxes of candy, scarves. For Mom, that had been too much, or not enough. Mim always gave her something she had made, a woven potholder, a hand-illustrated calendar. Rabbit was poor at making things, so he gave her himself, his trophies, his headlines. Mom had seemed satisfied. Lives more than things concerned her. But now what? What can a dying person desire? Grotesque prosthetic devices, arms, legs, battery-operated hearts run through Rabbit's head as he and Nelson walk the dazzling, Sunday-stilled downtown of Brewer. Up near 9th and Weiser, they find a drugstore open. Thermos bottles, sunglasses, shaving lotion, Kodak film, plastic baby pants, nothing for his mother. He wants something big, something bright, something to get through to her. Real girl liquid makeup, super plenamins, non-smear polish remover, Nudit for the legs, a rack of shampoo in hair color, a different smiling cunt on every envelope, Snow Queen blonde, Danish wheat, Killarney russet, Parisian spice, Spanish black wine. Nelson plucks him by the sleeve of his white shirt and leads to where a Sunbeam Clipmaster and a Rotoshine magnetic electric shoe polisher nestle side by side, glossily packaged. She doesn't wear shoes anymore, just slippers, he says. And she never cut her hair that I can remember. It used to hang down to her waist. But his attention is drawn onto a humidifier for $12.95. From the picture on the box, it looks like a flat flying saucer. No matter how immobile she gets, it would be there. Around Brewer, though, the summers are as humid as they can be anyway. But maybe in the winter the radiators dry out the house, the wallpaper peels, the skin cracks. It might help. It would be there night and day when he wasn't. He moves on to a can't-leak water bottle and a 2.5-inch reading glass and dismisses both as morbid. His insides are beginning to feel sickly. The pain of the world is a crater all these syrups and pills 1,000-fold would fail to fill. He comes to the Quick Ease electric massager with scalp comb. It has the silhouettes of naked women on the box, gracefully touching their shoulders, lesbians caressing the backs of their necks, where else the box leaves to the imagination, with what looks like a hairbrush on a live wire, $11.95. Bed sores, it might help. It might make her laugh, tickle, buzz. It is life. Life is a massage, and it costs $1 less than the humidifier. Time is ticking. Nelson tugs at his sleeve and wants a maple walnut ice cream soda. While the kid is eating it, Rabbit buys a birthday card to go with the massager. It shows a rooster crowing, a crimson sun rising, and green letters shouting on the outside, "It's great to get up in the a.m., and on the inside, "To wish you a happy birthday, Ma." Ma, am. God, what a lot of ingenious crap there is in the world. He buys it anyway because the rooster is bright orange and jubilant enough to get through to her. Her eyes aren't dim necessarily, but because her tongue gropes they could be. Play it safe. The world outside is bright and barren. The two of them, father and son, feel sharply alone, Rabbit gripping his bulky package. Where is everybody? Is there life on Earth? 3 blocks down the deserted street of soft asphalt, the clock that is the face of a giant flower, the center of the sunflower beer sign, says they are approaching 4. They wait at the same corner opposite the Phoenix Bar, where Harry's father customarily waits, and take the 16A bus to Mount Judge. They are the only passengers. The driver tells them mysteriously, "They're about down." Up they go through the city park, past the World War II tank and the band shell and the tennis court, around the shoulder of the mountain. On one side of them, gas stations and a green cliff. On the other, a precipice and, distantly, a viaduct. As the kid stares out of the window toward the next mountain over, Rabbit asks him, "Where did you go this morning? Tell me the truth." The boy answers finally, "Eisenhower Avenue. To see if Mommy's car was there?" "I guess." "Was it?" "Yup." "Did you go in?" "Nope, just looked up at the windows a while." "Did you know the number to look at?" 1204. "Yeah, that sounds right." They get off at Central, beside the Granite Baptist Church, and walk up Jackson toward his parents' house. The streets haven't changed in his lifetime. They were built too close together for vacant lots and too solidly to tear down, of a reddish brick with purplish bruises in it, and a texture that as a child Rabbit thought of as chapped, like his lips in winter. Maples and horse chestnuts darken the stumpy front lawns, hedged by little wired barricades of barberry and box. The houses are semi-detached and heavy. Their roofs are slate and their porches have brick walls, and above each door of oak and beveled glass winks a fanlight of somber, churchly colors. As a child, Rabbit imagined that fanlight to be a child of the windows above the Lutheran altar, and therefore of God, a mauve and golden seeing sentinel posted above, where he and Pop and Mom and Mim came and went a dozen times a day. Now entering with his son, still too much a son himself to knock, he feels his parents' place is stifling. Though the clock on the living room sideboard says only 4:20, darkness has come. Dark carpets, thick drawn drapes, dead wallpaper, potted plants crowding the glass on the side that has the windows. Mom used to complain about how they had the inside half of a corner house. But when the Bolgers, their old neighbors, died, and their half went onto the market, they made no move to inquire after the price, and a young couple from Scranton bought it, the young wife pregnant and barefoot, and the young husband something in one of the new electronic plants out along Route 422. And the Angstroms still live in the dark half. They prefer it. Sunlight fades, space kills. They sent him, Harry, out in the world to shine, but hugged their own shadows here. Their neighbor house on the other side, across 2 cement sidewalks with a strip of grass between them, where lived the old Methodist Mom used to fight with about who would mow the grass strip, has had a for sale sign up for a year. People now want more air and land than those huddled hillside neighborhoods can give them. The house smells to Rabbit of preservative, of odors filming other odors, of layers of time, of wax and aerosol and death, of safety. A shape, a shade, comes forward from the kitchen. He expects it to be his father, but it is his mother, shuffling in a bathrobe, yet erect and moving. She leans forward, unsmiling, to accept his kiss. Her wrinkled cheek is warm. Her hand, steadying itself on his wrist, is knobbed and cold. "Happy birthday, Mom." He hugs the massager against his chest. It is too early to offer it. She stares at the package as if he has put a shield between them. "I'm 65, she says, groping for phrases, so that her sentences end in the middle. "When I was 20, I told my boyfriend I wanted to be shot. When I was 30, it is not so much the strange, tremulous attempt of her lips to close upon a thought as the accompanying stare, an unblinking, ungathering gaze into space that lifts her eyes out of any flow and frightens Rabbit with a sense of ultimate blindness, of a blackboard from which they will all be wiped clean. "You told Pop this?" "Not your dad. Another. I didn't meet your dad till later. This other one, I'm glad. He's not here to see me now." "You look pretty good to me," Rabbit tells her. "I didn't think you'd be up." "Nelson, how do I look to you?" Thus she acknowledges the boy. She has always been testing him, putting him on the defensive. She has never forgiven him for not being another Harry, for having so much Janice in him. Those little Springer hands. Now her own hands, held forgotten in front of her bathrobe belt, constantly work in a palsied waggle. "Nice," Nelson says. He is wary. He has learned that brevity and promptness of response are his best defense. To take attention off the kid, Rabbit asks her, "Should you be up?" She laughs, an astonishing silent thing. Her head tips back, her big nose glints from the facets of its tip and underside. Her hand stops waggling. "I know the way Earl talks. You'd think from the way he wants me in bed. I'm laid out already. The doctor wants me up. I had to bake a cake. Earl wanted. One of those tasteless paps from the half-a-loaf. Where's Janice?" "Yeah, about that. She's awfully sorry she couldn't come. She had to go off with her mother to the Poconos. It took us all by surprise." Things can be surprising. From upstairs, Earl Angstrom's thin voice calls anxiously, with a wheedler's borrowed triumph, "They're down! Eagle has landed! We're on the moon, boys and girls! Uncle Sam is on the moon!" "That's just the place for him," Mom says, and with a rough gesture sweeps her distorted hand back toward her ear to smooth down a piece of hair that has wandered loose from the bun she still twists up. Funny, the hair as it grays grows more stubborn. They say even inside the grave it grows. Open coffins of women and find the whole thing stuffed like inside of a mattress. Pubic hair, too. Funny it never needs to be cut. Seraphina's looked threadbare, mangy. When he touches his mother's arm to help her up the stairs to look at the moon, the flesh above her elbow is disconcerting, loose upon the bone, as on a well-cooked chicken. The set is in Mom's bedroom at the front of the house. It has the smell their cellar used to have when they had those 2 cats. He tries to remember their names, Pansy and Willie. Willie the Tom got in so many fights his belly began to slosh, and he had to be taken to the animal rescue. There is no picture of the moon on the tube, just crackling voices, while cardboard cutouts simulate what is happening, and electronic letters spell out who in the crackle of men is speaking. Literally thousands of little 1- and 2-foot craters around the area, a man is saying in the voice that used to try to sell them shredded Ralston between episodes of Tom Mix. We see some angular blocks out several hundred feet in front of us that are probably 2 feet in size and have angular edges. There is a hill in view just about on the ground track ahead of us. Difficult to estimate, but might be a half a mile or a mile. A voice identified as Houston says, "Roger, Tranquility, we copy, over." The voice has that Texas authority, as if words were invented by them, they speak so lovingly. When Rabbit was stationed at Fort Hood in '53, Texas looked like the moon to him. Brown land running from his knees level as a knife, purple rumpled horizon, sky bigger and barer than he could believe. First time away from his damp green hills. Last time, too. Everybody's voice was so nice and gritty and loving, even the girls in the whorehouse. "Honey, you didn't pay to be no two-timer." A voice called Columbia says, "Sounds like a lot better than it did yesterday. At that very low angle it looked rough as a cob then." As a what? The electronic letters specify Mike Collins, speaking from command module orbiting moon. Tranquility says, "It really was rough, Mike, over the targeted landing area. It was extremely rough, cratered, and large numbers of rocks that were probably some many larger than 5 or 10 feet in size." Mom's room has lace curtains, aged, yellowish, and pinned back with tin daisies, that to an infant's eyes seemed magical. Rose and thorns wallpaper curling loose from the wall, above where the radiator safety valve steams. A kind of plush armchair that soaks up dust. When he was a child, this chair was downstairs, and he would sock it to release torrents of swirling motes into the shaft of afternoon sun. These whirling motes seemed to him worlds, each an earth, with him on one of them, unthinkably small, unbearably. Some light used to get into the house in late afternoon between the maples. Now the same maples have thronged that light solid, made the room cellar dim. The bedside table supports an erect little company of pill bottles and a Bible. The walls hold tinted photographs of himself and Mim in high school, taken, he remembers, by a pushy, pudgy little blue-jawed crook who called himself a studio, and weaseled his way into the building every spring and made them line up in the auditorium and wet-comb their hair, so their parents couldn't resist, 2 weeks later, letting them take into the home room the money for an 8x10 tinted print and a sheet of wallet-sized grizzlies of themselves. Now this crook, by the somersault of time, has become a donor of selves otherwise forever lost. Rabbit's skinny head, pink in its translucent blonde whiffle, his ears out from his head an inch, his eyes unreally blue as marbles, even his lower lids youthfully fleshy, and Miriam's face plump between the shoulder-length shampoo-shining sheaves rolled under in Rita Hayworth style, the scarlet tint of her lipstick pinned like a badge on the starched white of her face. Both children smile out into space through the crook's smudged lens from that sweat-scented, giggling Jim toward their mother, bedridden someday. Columbia jokes, "When in doubt, land long." Tranquility says, "Well, we did." And Houston intervenes, "Tranquility, Houston, we have a P-22 update for you if you're ready to copy, over." Columbia jokes again, "At your service, sir." Houston, unamused, a city of computers working without sleep, answers, "Right, Mike. P1104-3218, P2104-3728, and that is 4 miles south. This is based on a targeted landing site, over." Columbia repeats the numbers. Tranquility says, "Our mission timer is now reading 9043447 and static. Roger, copy. Your mission timer is now static at," say again the time, 9043447. "Roger, copy, Tranquility. That gravity line looked good. We see you recycling." "Well, no. I was trying to get time 1665 out, and somehow it proceeded on the 622 before I could do a BRP 32 enter. I want to log a time here, and then I'd like to know whether you want me to proceed on torquing angles or to go back and re-enter again before torquing. Over. Raj, Buzz, stand by. Nelson and his grandfather listen raptly to these procedures. Mary Angstrom turns impatiently, or is it that her difficulty of motion makes all gestures appear impatient, and makes her shuffling way out into the landing and down the stairs again. Rabbit, heart trembling in its hollow, follows. She needs no help going down the stairs. In the garishly bright kitchen she asks, "Where did you say Janice was?" "In the Poconos with her mother." "Why should I believe that?" "Why shouldn't you?" She stoops over, waveringly, to open the oven and look in, her tangled wire hair making a net of light. She grunts, stands, and states, "Janice stays out of my way these days." In his frightened, hypnotized condition, Rabbit can only, it seems, ask questions. Why should she do that? His mother stares and stares, only a movement of her tongue between her parted lips betraying that she is trying to speak. "I know too much," she at last brings out, "about her." Rabbit says, "You know only what a bunch of pathetic old gossips tell you about her. And stop bugging Pop about it. He comes into work and bugs me." Since she does not fight back, he is provoked to go on. "With Mim out turning 10 tricks a day in Las Vegas, I'd think you'd have more to worry about than poor Janice's private life." "She was always," his mother brings out, "spoiled." "Yes, and Nelson, too, I suppose, is spoiled. How would you describe me? Just yesterday I was sitting over at the Blasts game thinking how lousy I used to be at baseball. Let's face it. As a human being, I'm about C-. As a husband, I'm about zilch. When Verity folds, I'll fold with it and have to go on welfare. Some life. Thanks, Mom." "Hush," she says, expressionless. "You'll make the cake fall." And like a rusty jackknife, she forces herself to bend over and peer into the gas oven. "Sorry, Mom, but Jesus, I'm tired lately." "You'll feel better when you're my age." The party is a success. They sit at the kitchen table with the 4 places worn through the enamel in all those years. It is like it used to be, except that Mom is in a bathrobe and Mim has become Nelson. Pop carves the roast beef and then cuts up Mom's piece in small bits for her. Her right hand can hold a fork but cannot use a knife. Her teeth slipping down, he proposes a toast in New York State wine to "My Mary, an angel through thick and thin." Rabbit wonders what the thin was. Maybe this is it. When she unwraps her few presents, she laughs at the massager. "Is this to keep me hopping?" she asks, and has her husband plug it in, and rests it, vibrating, on the top of Nelson's head. He needs this touch of cheering up. Harry feels Janice's absence gnawing at him. When the cake is cut, the kid eats only half a piece, so Rabbit has to eat double so not to hurt his mother's feelings. Dusk thickens. Over in West Brewer, the sanatorium windows are burning orange, and on this side of the mountain the shadows sneak like burglars into the narrow concrete space between this house and the unsold one. Through the papered walls, from the house of the young barefoot couple, seeps the dull bass percussion of a rock group, making the matched tins, cookies, sugar, flour, coffee, on Mom's shelf tingle in their emptiness. In the living room, the glass face of the mahogany sideboard shivers. Nelson's eyes begin to sink, and the buttoned-up cupid curves of his mouth smile in apology as he slumps forward into the cold enamel of the table. His elders talk about old times in the neighborhood, people of the 30s and 40s, once so alive you saw them every day, and never thought to take even a photograph. The old Methodist refusing to mow his half of the grass strip. Before him the Zims, with that pretty daughter the mother would shriek at every breakfast and supper. The man down the street who worked nights at the pretzel plant and who shot himself one dawn, with nobody to hear it but the horses of the milk wagon. They had milk wagons then. The streets were soft dust. Nelson fights sleep. Rabbit asks him, "Want to head home?" "Negative, Pop." He drowsily grins at his own wit. Rabbit extends the joke. "The time is 21 hours. We better rendezvous with our spacecraft." But the spacecraft is empty. A long, empty box in the blackness of Penn Villas, slowly spinning in the void, its border beds half-weeded. The kid is frightened to go home. So is Rabbit. They sit on Mom's bed and watch television in the dark. They are told the men in the big metal spider sitting on the moon cannot sleep, so the moonwalk has been moved up several hours. Men in studios, brittle and tired from killing time, demonstrate with actual-size mock-ups what is supposed to happen. On some channels, men in spacesuits are walking around, laying down tinfoil trays as if for a cookout. At last it happens, the real event. Or is it? A television camera on the leg of the module comes on. An abstraction appears on the screen. The announcer explains that the blackness in the top of the screen is the lunar night. The blackness in the lower left corner is the shadow of the spacecraft with its ladder. The whiteness is the surface of the moon. Nelson is asleep, his head on his father's thigh. Funny how kids' skulls grow damp when they sleep, like bulbs underground. Mom's legs are hidden under the blankets. She is propped up on pillows behind him. Pop is asleep in his chair, his breathing a distant, sad sea, touching shore and retreating, touching shore and retreating, an old pump that keeps going. Lamplight sneaks through a crack in the window shade and touches the top of his head. His sparse hair mussed into lank feathers. On the bright box, something is happening. A snaky shape sneaks down from the upper left corner. It is a man's leg. It grows another leg, eclipses the bright patch that is the surface of the moon. A man in clumsy silhouette has interposed himself among these abstract shadows and glare. He says something about steps that a crackle keeps Rabbit from understanding. Electronic letters traveling sideways spell out, "Man is on the moon." The voice, crackling, tells Houston that the surface is fine and powdery. He can pick it up with his toe. It adheres to his boot like powdered charcoal, that he sinks in only a fraction of an inch, that it's easier to move around than in the simulations on the Earth. From behind him, Rabbit's mother's hand with difficulty reaches out, touches the back of his skull, stays there, awkwardly tries to massage his scalp, to ease away thoughts of the trouble she knows he is in. "I don't know, Mom," he abruptly admits. "I know it's happened, but I don't feel anything yet." Chapter 2. Jill. It's different, but it's very pretty out here. Neil Armstrong, July 20th, 1969. Days, pale slices between nights. They blend, not exactly alike. Transparencies so lightly tinted that only stacked all together do they darken to a fatal shade. One Saturday in August, Buchanan approaches Rabbit during the coffee break. They are part of the half-crew working the half-day. Hence, perhaps, this intimacy. The Negro wipes from his lips the moisture of the morning whiskey enjoyed outside in the sunshine of the loading platform and asks, "How are they treating you, Harry?" "They?" Harry has known the other man by sight and name for years, but still is not quite easy talking to a black. There always seems to be some joke involved that he doesn't quite get. "The world, man." "Not bad." Buchanan stands there blinking, studying, jiggling up and down on his feet engagingly. Hard to tell how old they are. He might be 35, he might be 60. On his upper lip he wears the smallest possible black mustache, smaller than a type brush. His color is ashy without any shine to it, whereas the other shop Negro, Farnsworth, looks shoe-polished and twinkles among the printing machinery under the steady, shadowless light. But not good, huh? I'm not sleeping so good, Rabbit does confess. He has an itch these days to confess, to spill, he is so much alone. Your old lady still shacking up across town? Everybody knows. Niggers, coolies, derelicts, morons. Numbers writers, bus conductors, beauty shop operators, the entire brick city of Brewer. Verity employee named Cuckold of Week. Angstrom accepts official horns from mayor. I'm living alone, Harry admits, adding, with the kid. How about that, Buchanan says, lightly rocking. How about that? Rabbit says weakly, until things straighten out. Getting any tail? Harry must look startled, for Buchanan hastens to explain. Man has to have tail. Where's your dad these days? The question flows from the assertion immediately, though it doesn't seem to follow. Rabbit says, puzzled, offended, but because Buchanan is a Negro not knowing how to evade him, he's taking 2 weeks off so he can drive my mother back and forth to the hospital for some tests. Yes, Buchanan mauls, the two pushed-out cushions of his mouth appearing to commune with each other through a hum. Then a new thought darts out through them, making his mustache jig. Your dad is a real pal to you. That's a wonderful thing. That is a truly wonderful thing. I never had a dad like that. I knew who the man was. He was around town, but he was never my dad in the sense that your dad is your dad. He was never my pal like that. Harry hangs uncertainly, not knowing if he should commiserate or laugh. Well, he decides to confess, he's sort of a pal, and sort of a pain in the neck. Buchanan likes the remark, even though he goes through peppery motions of rejecting it. Oh, never say that now. You just be grateful you have a dad that cares. You don't know, man, how lucky you have it. Just 'cause your wife's getting her ass looked after elsewhere don't mean the whole world has come to some bad end. You should be having your tail is all. You're a big fella. Distaste and excitement contend in Harry. He feels tall and pale beside Buchanan, and feminine, a tingling target of fun and tenderness and avarice mixed. Talking to Negroes makes him feel itchy up behind the eyeballs, maybe because theirs look so semi-liquid and yellow and white and sore. Their whole beings seem lubricated on pain. I'll manage, he says reluctantly, thinking of Peggy Fasnacht. The end of break bell rings. Buchanan snaps his shoulders into a hunch and out of it as if rendering a verdict. How about it, Harry? Stepping out with some of the boys tonight, he says. Come on into Jimbo's lounge around 9, 10. See what develops. Maybe nothing, maybe something. You're just turning old the way you're going now. Old and fat and finicky. And that's no way for a nice big man to go. He sees that Rabbit's instincts are to refuse. He holds up a quick palm, the color of silver polish, and says, Think about it. I like you, man. If you don't show, you don't show. No sweat. All Saturday the invitation hums in his ears. Something in what Buchanan said. He was lying down to die, had been lying down for years. His body had been telling him to. His eyes blur print in the afternoons. No urge to run walking even that stretch of tempting curved sidewalk home. Has to fight sleep before supper, and then can't get under at night. Can't even get it up to jerk off to relax himself. Awake with the first light every morning regardless. Another day scraping his eyes. Without going much of anywhere in his life, he has somehow seen everything too often. Trees, weather, the molding trim drying its cracks wider around the front door. He notices every day going out. House made of green wood. No belief in an afterlife, no hope for it. Too much more of the same thing. Already it seems he's lived twice. When he came back to Janice, that began the second time for him. Poor kid is having her first time now. Bless that dope. At least she had the drive to get out. Women, fire in their crotch, won't burn out. Begin by fighting off pricks, end by going wild hunting for one that still works. Once last week he called the lot to find out if she and Stavros were reporting for work or just screwing around the clock. Mildred Croust answered. She put him on to Janice, who whispered, Harry, Daddy doesn't know about us. Don't ever call me here. I'll call you back. And she had called him late that afternoon at the house, Nelson in the other room, watching Gilligan's Island, and said, cool as you please, he hardly knew her voice, Harry, I'm sorry for whatever pain this is causing you, truly sorry. But it's very important that at this point in our lives we don't let guilt feelings motivate us. I'm trying to look honestly into myself to see who I am and where I should be going. I want us both, Harry, to come to a decision we can live with. It's the year 1969, and there's no reason for two mature people to smother each other to death simply out of inertia. I'm searching for a valid identity, and I suggest you do the same." After some more of this, she hung up. Her vocabulary had expanded. Maybe she was watching a lot of psychiatric talk shows. "The sinners shall be justified." Screw her. Dear Lord, screw her. He is thinking this on the bus. He thinks screw her, and at home has a beer and takes a bath and puts on his good summer suit, a light gray sharkskin, and gets Nelson's pajamas out of the dryer and his toothbrush out of the bathroom. He thinks screw her, and at home has a beer and takes a bath and puts on his good summer suit, a light gray sharkskin, and gets Nelson's pajamas out of the dryer and his toothbrush out of the bathroom. The kid and Billy have arranged for him to spend the night. Harry calls up Peggy to check it out. "Oh, absolutely," she says. "I'm not going anywhere. Why don't you stay and have dinner?" "I can't, I don't think." "Why not? Something else to do?" "Sort of." He and the kid go over around 6 on an empty bus. Already at this hour, Weiser has that weekend up-tempo, cars hurrying faster home to get out again, a very fat man with orange hair standing under an awning, savoring a cigar as if angels will shortly descend, an expectant shimmer on the shut storefronts, girls clicking along with heads big as rose bushes, curlers wrapped in a kerchief. Saturday night. Peggy meets him at the door with an offer of a drink. She and Billy live in an apartment in one of the new 8-story buildings in West Brewer overlooking the river, where there used to be a harness racetrack. From her living room she has a panorama of Brewer, the concrete eagle on the skyscraper courthouse flaring his wings above the back of the Owl Pretzels sign. Beyond the flower-pot red city, Mount Judge hangs smoky green, one side gashed by a gravel pit like a roast beginning to be carved, the river coal black. "Maybe just one. I gotta go somewhere." "You said that. What kind of drink?" She is wearing a clingy, palish purple sort of paisley mini that shows a lot of heavy leg. One thing Janice always had was nifty legs. Peggy has a pasty, helpless look of white meat behind the knees. "You have daiquiri mix?" "I don't know. Ollie used to keep things like that, but when we moved, I think it all stayed with him." She and Ollie Fasnacht had lived in an asbestos-shingled semi-detached some blocks away, not far from the county mental hospital. Ollie lives in the city now, near his music store, and she and the kid have this apartment, with Ollie in their view, if they can find him. She is rummaging in a low cabinet below some empty bookcases. "I can't see any. It comes in envelopes. How about gin and something?" "You have bitter lemon?" More rummaging. "No, just some tonic." "Good enough." "Want me to make it?" "If you like." She stands up, heavy-legged, lightly sweating, relieved. Knowing he was coming, Peggy had decided against sunglasses, a sign of trust to leave them off. Her wall eyes are naked to him. Her face has this helpless look, turned full toward him, while both eyes seem fascinated by something in the corners of the ceiling. He knows only one eye is bad, but he never can bring himself to figure out which. And all around her eyes, this net of white wrinkles, the sunglasses usually conceal. He asks her, "What for you?" "Oh, anything. The same thing. I drink everything." While he is cracking an ice tray in the tiny kitchenette, the two boys have snuck out of Billy's bedroom. Rabbit wonders if they have been looking at dirty photographs, the kind of pictures kids used to have to pay an old cripple on Plum Street $1 apiece for. You can buy a whole magazine full of now for 75 cents right downtown. The Supreme Court, old men letting the roof cave in. Billy is a head taller than Nelson, sunburned where Nelson takes a tan after his mother, both of them with hair down over their ears. The Fosnacht boy's blonder and curlier. "Mom, we want to go downstairs and run the mini-bike on the parking lot." "Come back up in an hour," Peggy tells them. "I'll give you supper." "Nelson had a peanut butter sandwich before we left," Rabbit explains. "Typical male cooking," Peggy says. "Where are you going this evening anyway, all dressed up in a suit?" "Nowhere much. I told a guy I might meet him. He doesn't say it as a Negro. He should be asking her out," is his sudden frightened feeling. She is dressed to go out, but not so dolled up it can't appear she plans to stay home tonight. He hands her her G&T. The best defense is to be offensive. "You don't have any mint or limes or anything?" Her plucked eyebrows lift. "No, there are lemons in the fridge is all. I could run down to the grocery for you." Not entirely ironical, using his complaint to weave coziness. Rabbit laughs to retract. "Forget it. I'm just used to bars where they have everything. At home all I ever do is drink beer." She laughs in answer. She is tense as a schoolteacher facing her first class. To relax them both, he sits down in a loose leather armchair that says, "Phew." "Hey, this is nice," he announces, meaning the vista. But he spoke too early, for from this low chair the view is flung out of sight and becomes all sky. A thin, bright wash, stripes like fat in bacon. You should hear Ollie complain about the rent. Peggy sits down, not in another chair, but on the flat grill where the radiator breathes beneath the window, opposite and above him, so he sees a lot of her legs, shiny skin stuffed to the point of shapelessness. Still, she is showing him what she has, right up to the triangle of underpants, which is one more benefit of being alive in 1969. Mini-skirts in those magazines. Well, hell, we've always known women had crotches. Why not make it legal? A guy at the shop brought in a magazine that honestly was all cunts, in blurred, bad four-color, but cunts, upside down, backwards, the girls attached to them, rolling their tongues in their mouths and fanning their hands on their bellies and otherwise trying to hide how silly they felt. Homely things, really, cunts. Without the Supreme Court, that might never have been made clear. "Hey, how is old Ollie?" Peggy shrugs. "He calls, usually to cancel his Sunday with Billy. You know, he never was the family man you are." "How does he spend his time?" "Oh," Peggy says, and awkwardly turns her body so Rabbit sees pricked out in window light the tonic bubbles in her drink, which is surprisingly near drunk. "He rattles around Brewer with a bunch of creeps, musicians mostly. They go to Philadelphia a lot and New York. Last winter he went skiing at Aspen and told me all about it, including the girls. He came back so brown I cried for days. I could never get him outdoors when we had the place over on Franklin Street." "How do you spend your time?" "I work. I mope around the house with the kid. We look at the boob tube and play catch in the backyard." "Do you mope for her, Harry?" With a clumsy shrug of her hip, the woman moves off her radiator perch, her blue eyes staring wildly above his head. So he thinks she is launching herself at him and flinches. The net of wrinkles around her eyes seems a net flung at his head, but she floats past him and, clattering, refills her drink. "Want another?" "No, thanks. I'm still working on this one. I gotta go in a minute." "So soon?" she croons unseen, as if remembering the beginning of a song in her tiny kitchenette. From far below their windows arises the razzing, coughing sound of the boys on the mini-bike. The noise swoops and swirls, a rude buzzard. Beyond it, across the river, hangs the murmur of Brewer traffic, constant like the sea. An occasional car toots, a wink of phosphorescence. From the kitchenette, as if she had been baking the thought in the oven, Peggy calls, "She's not worth it." Then her body is at his back, her voice upon his head. "I didn't know," she says, "you loved her so much. I don't think Janice knew it either." "Well, you get used to somebody. Anyway, it's an insult, with a spick like that. You should hear him run down the U.S. government." "Harry, you know what I think? I'm sure you know what I think." He doesn't. He has no idea. She seems to think he's been reading her underpants. "I think she's treated you horribly." The last time we had lunch together, I told her so. I said, Janice, your attempts to justify yourself do not impress me. You've left a man who came back to you when you needed him, and you've left your son at a point in his development when it's immensely important to have a stable home setting. I said that right to her face. Actually, the kid goes over to the lot pretty much and sees her there. She and Stavros take him out to eat. In a way, it's like he gained an uncle. You're so forgiving, Harry. Ollie would have strangled me. He's still immensely jealous. He's always asking me who my boyfriends are. He doubts she has any and sips his drink. Although in this county, women with big bottoms usually don't go begging. Dutchmen love bulk. He says, well, I don't know if I did such a great job with Janice. She has to live too. Well, Harry, if that's your reasoning, we all have to live. And from the way she stands there in front of him, if he sat up straight, her pussy would be exactly at his nose. Tickling hair. He might sneeze. He sips the drink again and feels the tasteless fluid expand his inner space. He might sit up at any minute if she doesn't watch out. From the hair on her head, probably a thick, springy bush, though you can't always tell. Some of the cunts in the magazine just had wisps at the base of their bellies, hardly an armpit's worth. Dolls. She moves away, saying, who'll hold families together if everybody has to live? Living is a compromise between doing what you want and doing what other people want. What about what poor old God wants? The uncalled-for noun jars her from the seductive pose she has assumed, facing out the window, her backside turned to him. The dog position. Tip her over a chair and let her fuss herself with her fingers into coming while he does it from behind. Janice got so she preferred it, more animal. She wasn't distracted by the look on his face. Never was one for wet kisses. When they first started going together, complained she couldn't breathe. He asked her if she had adenoids. Seriously. No two alike. A billion cunts in the world, snowflakes. Touch them right, they melt. What we most protect is what we want to be invaded. Peggy leaves her drink on the sill like a tall jewel and turns to him with her deformed face open. Since the word has been sprung on her, she asks, don't you think God is people? No, I think God is everything that isn't people. I guess I think that. I don't think enough to know what I think. In irritation, he stands. Big, against the window, a hot shadow, palish purple edges catching the light ebbing from the red city, the dim mountain, Peggy exclaims, oh, you think with... And to assist her awkward thought, she draws his shape in the air with two hands, having freed them for this gesture, your whole person. She looks so helpless and vague, there seems nothing for Harry to do but step into the outline of himself she has drawn and kiss her. Her face, eclipsed, feels large and cool. Her lips bumble on his, the spongy wax of gumdrops, yet narcotic, not quite tasteless. As a kid, Rabbit loved bland candy like dots. Sitting in the movies, he used to plow through 3-nickel boxes of them, playing with them with his tongue and teeth, playing before giving himself the ecstasy of the bite. Up and down his length she bumps against him, straining against his height, touching, the strange place on her where nothing is, the strange place higher where some things are, her haunches knot with the effort of keeping on tiptoe. She pushes. He is a cunt, this one-eyed woman is coldly pushing up into. He feels her mind gutter out. She has wrapped them in a clumsy, large ball of darkness. Something scratches on the ball, a key in the lock. Then the door knocks. Harry and Peggy push apart. She tucks her hair back around her spread-legged eyes and runs heavily to the door and lets in the boys. They are red-faced and furious. "Mom, the fucking thing broke down again," Billy tells his mother. Nelson looks over at Harry. The boy is near tears. Since Janice left, he is silent and delicate, an eggshell full of tears. "It wasn't my fault," he calls huskily, injustice a sieve in his throat. "Dad, he says it was my fault." "You baby, I didn't say that exactly." "You did. He did, Dad, and it wasn't. All I said was he spun out too fast. He always spins out too fast. He flipped on a loose stone. Now the headlight is bent under and it won't start. If it wasn't such a cheap one, it wouldn't break all the time. It's not a cheap one. It's the best one there is almost. And anyway, you don't even have any. I wouldn't take one if you gave it to me. So who are you to talk? Hey, easy, easy, Harry says. We'll get it fixed. I'll pay for it. Don't pay for it, Dad. It wasn't anybody's fault. It just he's so spoiled. You shrimp, Billy says, and hits him, much the same way that 3 weeks ago Harry hit Janice. Hard, but seeking a spot that could take it. Harry separates them, squeezing Billy's arm so the kid clams up. This kid is going to be tough someday. Already his arm is stringy. Peggy is just bringing it all into focus, her insides shifting back from that kiss. Billy, these things will happen if you insist on playing so dangerously. To Harry she says, Damn Ollie for getting it for him. I think he did it to spite me. He knows I hate machines. Harry decides Billy is the one to talk to. Hey, Billy, shall I take Nelson back home, or do you want him to spend the night anyway? And both boys set up a wailing for Nelson to spend the night. Dad, you don't have to come for me or anything. I'll ride my bike home in the morning first thing. I left it here yesterday. So Rabbit releases Billy's arm and gives Nelson a kiss somewhere around the ear and tries to find the right eye of Peggy's to look into. Okie doke. I'll be off. She says, Must you? Stay. Can't I give you supper? Another drink? It's early yet. This guy's waiting, Rabbit lies, and makes it around her furniture to the door. Her body chases him, her vague eyes shining in their tissue paper sockets, and her lips have that loosened look kissed lips get. He resists the greedy urge to buy another box of dots. Harry, she begins, and seems to fall toward him after a stumble, though they don't touch. Yeah? I'm usually here if, you know. I know. Thanks for the G&T. Your view is great. He reaches then and pats, not her ass exactly, the flank at the side of it, too broad, too firm, alive enough under his palm, it turns out, to make him wonder, when her door closes, why he is going down the elevator and out. It is too early to meet Buchanan. He walks back through the West Brewer side streets toward Weiser, through the dulling summer light and the sounds of distant games, of dishes rattled in kitchen sinks, of television muffled to a murmur mechanically laced with laughter and applause, of cars driven by teenagers laying rubber and shifting down. Children and old men sit on the porch steps beside the lead-colored milk bottle boxes. Some stretches of sidewalk are brick. These neighborhoods, the oldest in West Brewer, close to the river, are cramped, gentle, barren. Between the few trees, city trees that never knew an American forest, they brought them in from China and Brazil, there is a rigid flourishing of hydrants, meters, and signs, some of them virtual billboards in white on green, directing motorists to superhighways whose number is blazoned on the federal shield, or on the Commonwealth keystone. From these obscure West Brewer byways, sidewalks, and asphalt streets, rumpled comfortably as old clothes, one can be arrowed toward Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, the national capital, New York, the headquarters of commerce and fashion. Or in the other direction can find Pittsburgh, Chicago, mountains of snow, a coastline of sun. But beneath these awesome metal insignia of vastness and motion, fat men in undershirts loiter, old ladies move between patches of gossip with the rural waddle of egg-gatherers, dogs sleep curled beside the cooling curb, and children with hockey sticks and tape-handled bats diffidently chip at wiffle balls and wads of leather, whittling themselves into the next generation of athletes and astronauts. Rabbit's eyes sting in the dusk, in this smoke of his essence, these harmless neighborhoods that have gone to seed. So much love, too much love. It is our madness. It is rotting us out, exploding us like dandelion palls. He stops at a corner grocery for a candy bar, an O. Henry, then at the Burger Bliss on Weiser. dazzling in its lake of parking space for a lunar special, double cheeseburger with an American flag stuck into the bun, and a vanilla milkshake that tastes toward the bottom of chemical sludge. The interior of Burger Bliss is so bright that his fingernails, with their big mauve moons, gleam, and the coins he puts down in payment seem cartwheels of metal. Beyond the lake of light, unfriendly darkness. He ventures out past a dimmed drive-in bank and crosses the bridge. High, slender arc lamps on giant flower stems send down a sublunar light by which the hurrying cars all appear purple. There are no other faces but his on the bridge. From the middle, Brewer seems a web, to which glowing droplets adhere. Mount Judge is one with the night. The luminous smudge on the Pinnacle Hotel hangs like a star. Gnats, bred by the water, brush Rabbit's face. Janice's desertion nags him from within, a sore spot in his stomach. Ease off beer and coffee. Alone, he must take care of himself. Sleeping alone, he dreads the bed, watches the late shows, Carson, Griffin, cocky guys with nothing to sell but their brass, making millions on sheer gall. American dream. When he first heard the phrase as a kid, he pictured God lying sleeping, the quilt-colored map of the U.S. coming out of his head like a cloud. Peggy's embrace drags at his limbs. Suit feels sticky. Jimbo's friendly lounge is right off the Brewer end of the bridge, a half block down from Plum. Inside it, all the people are black. Black to him is just a political word, but these people really are. Their faces shine of blackness turning as he enters. A large, soft white man in a sticky gray suit. Fear travels up and down his skin, but the music of the great green and mauve glowing jukebox called Moon Mood slides on, and the liquid of laughter and tickled muttering resumes flowing. His entrance was merely a snag. Rabbit hangs like a balloon waiting for a dart. Then his elbow is jostled, and Buchanan is beside him. "Hey, man, you made it!" The Negro has materialized from the smoke. His over-trimmed mustache looks wicked in here. "You didn't think I would?" "Doubted it," Buchanan says. "Doubted it severely." "It was your idea." "Right, Harry, you are right. I'm not arguing. I am rejoicing. Let's fix you up. You need a drink, right?" "I don't know. My stomach's getting kind of sensitive." "You need 2 drinks. Tell me your poison." "Maybe a daiquiri?" "Never. That is a lady's drink for salad luncheons." "Roof, you old rascal?" "Yasser, yasser," comes the answer from the bar. "Do a stinger for the man." "Yes, sir." Roof has a bald head like one of the stone hatches in the Brewer Museum, only better polished. He bows into the marine underglow of the bar, and Buchanan leads Rabbit to a booth in the back. The place is deep and more complicated than it appears from the outside. Booths recede and lurk, dark wood cape shapes. Along one wall, Roof and the low-lit bar. Behind and above it, not only the usual Pabst and Bud and Miller's gimcracks, bobbing and shimmering, but 2 stuffed small deer heads staring with bright brown eyes that will never blink. Gazelles. Could they have been gazelles? A space away, toward a wall, but with enough room for a row of booths behind, a baby grand piano, painted silver with one of those spray cans, silver in circular swirls. In a room obliquely off the main room, a pool table. Colored boys, all arms and legs, spidering around the idyllic green felt. The presence of any game reassures Rabbit. Where any game is being played, a hedge exists against fury. "Come meet some soul," Buchanan says. 2 shadows in the booth are a man and a woman. The man wears silver circular glasses and a little pussy of a goatee and is young. The woman is old and wrinkled and smokes a yellow cigarette that requires much sucking in and holding down and closing of the eyes and sighing. Her brown eyelids are gray, painted blue. Sweat shines below the base of her throat, on the slant bone between her breasts, as if she had breasts, which she does not, though her dress, the blood color of a rooster's comb, is cut deep, as if she did. Before they are introduced, she says "Hi" to Harry, but her eyes slit to pin him fast in the sliding of a dream. "This man," Buchanan is announcing, "is a co-worker of mine. He works right beside his daddy at Verity Press, an expert linotypist," giving syllables an odd, ticking equality, a put-on or a signal of some sort. "But not only that. He is an athlete of renown, a basketball player bar none, the big O of Brewer in his day." "Very beautiful," the other dark man says. Round specks tilt, glint. The shadow of a face they cling to feels thin in the darkness. The voice arises very definite and dry. "Many years ago," Rabbit says, apologizing for his bulk, his bloated pallor, his dead fame. He sits down in the booth to hide. "He has the hands," the woman states. She is in a trance. She says, "Give old Babe one of those hands, white boy." A prickle with nervousness, wanting to sneeze on the sweetish smoke, Rabbit lifts his right hand up from his lap and lays it on the slippery table. Innocent meat. Distorted paw. Reminds him of, on television, that show with chimpanzees synchronized with talk and music, the eerie look of having just missed a correct design. The woman touches it, her touch reptilian cool. Her eyes lift, brooding. Above the glistening bone, her throat drips jewels, a napkin of rhinestones, or maybe real diamonds. Cadillacs, after all, alligator shoes. They can't put their money into real estate like whites. Springer's thrifty Toyota's not to the point. His mind is racing with his pulse. She has a silver sequin pasted beside one eye. Accent the ugly until it becomes gorgeous. Her eyelashes are great false crescents. That she has taken such care of herself leads him to suspect she will not harm him. His pulse slows. Her touch slithers nice as a snake. "Do dig that thumb," she advises the air. She caresses his thumb's curve, its thin-skinned, veined ball, its colorless moon nail. "That thumb means sweetness and light. It is an indicator of pleasure in Sagittarius and Leo." She gives one knuckle an affectionate pinch. The Negro, not Buchanan has hustled to the bar to check on the stinger, says, "Not like one of them usual little sawed-off nuggas these devils come at you with, right?" Babe answers, not yielding her trance, "No, sir. This thumb here is extremely plausible. Under the right signs it would absolutely function. Now these knuckles here, they aren't so good. I don't get much music out of these knuckles." And she presses a chord on them with fingers startlingly hard and certain. "But this here thumb," she goes back to caressing it, "is a real enough heartbreaker." All these Charlies is heartbreakers, right? Just 'cause they don't know how to shake their butterball asses don't mean they don't get number one in. They gets it in real mean, right? The reason they so mean, they has so much religion, right? That big white God go tells them, screw that black chick, and they really wangs away 'cause God's right there slapping away at their butterball asses. Cracker spelled backwards is fucker, right? Rabbit wonders if this is how the young Negro really talks, wondering if there is a real way. He does not move, does not even bring back his hand from the woman's inspection. Her touches chill as teeth. He is among panthers. Buchanan, that old rascal, bustles back and sets before Rabbit a tall, pale glass of poison, and shoves in so Rabbit has to shove over opposite the other man. Buchanan's eyes check around the faces and guess it's gotten heavy. Lightly he says, "This man's wife, you know what? That woman, I never had the pleasure of meeting her, not counting those Verity picnics where Farnsworth, you all know Farnsworth now. Like a father," the young man says, adding, "right? Gets me so bombed out of my mind on that barrel beer I can't remember anybody by face or name. Where was I? Yes, that woman, she just upped and left him the other week. Left him flat to go chasing around with some other gentleman. Something like a Spaniard, didn't you say, Harry?" "A Greek." Babe clucks. "Honey, now what did he have you didn't? He must have had a thumb long as this badmouth's tongue." She nudges her companion, who retrieves from his lips this shared cigarette, which has grown so short it must burn, and sticks out his tongue. Its whiteness shocks Rabbit, a mouthful of luminous flesh. Though fat and pale, it does not look very long. This man, Rabbit sees, is a boy. The patch of goatee is all he can grow.